Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the latest in IPI's series of webinars. Today, we are focusing on empowering your employees through the utilization of automation technologies and what this can mean for organizations that are looking to take advantage of the latest emerging technologies. So by way of some quick introductions, my name is Ben Smith.
Yeah, hi, and my name is Craig Farley.
And myself and Craig are both consultants within the emerging technology arm of IPI. It might sound a bit biased, but myself and Craig are fortunate enough in that our roles allow us to help customers deploy the latest innovations to solve customer problems whilst maintaining a focus on delivering exceptional customer contact. Today we're going to be talking about one of the topics that is on everybody's lips, and that is automation. You may have heard buzzwords such as robotic process automation or RPA, digital assistants, digital agents, intelligent agent desktops, and let's not forget everybody's favorite, which is artificial intelligence or AI, which is really just a bit of a buzzword for a suite of technologies that sit underneath it. But being in the emerging technology division of a contact center consultancy company, we're involved in a lot of these kinds of projects. So today we want to share some simple advice and hopefully some interesting insights as well. So for anybody on the line who hasn't been to one of our webinars before, firstly, welcome, thanks for joining us. But to provide a bit of an idea as to how these sessions run and how we sort of tend to, how we find they sort of tend to run the best, please do post questions at any time. There should be a question window floating on your sort of GoToWebinar application on the screen. Polls do require input, as well as us wanting this to be interactive. The feedback that we get is information. Stats are really useful and very interesting for us to sort of go through after these sessions as well. So please do get involved with the polls as well. We are going to have a Q&A session at the end of the session. So as you submit any questions as we go through this, we'll cover all those off at the end. And then we'll put some contact details as well. If there's any more information that anybody would like, any extra clarification, or just generally any help for any projects that you may be considering. The technology in our industry is evolving at such a fast pace at the moment that we know it can be a bit bewildering to what to potentially do first. But ultimately, a lot of the solutions that we talk around are very clever, really useful tools when deployed correctly. They are, after all, only enablers. So you do need to get your house in order operationally as well. There will be a recording of this session available on the IPI website for anybody who wishes to watch back or maybe pass on to any of your colleagues. But to kick us off, we've actually got our first poll, so a bit of a test of the audience engagement. The question is, has your business deployed robotic process automation? There's 5 options there. Yes, you have, but it's behind the scenes and it's only in the back office. Second option, our contact center employees have got their own robot helpers. You've got RPA perhaps installed across your entire organization. Not yet, but maybe it's something that you are considering, or you're just not sure. So just give that another couple of seconds, and you can see some responses are coming in. And actually, while we wait for the last couple of responses, we actually had our annual company event kickoff a couple of weeks ago, and we were lucky enough to have Martin Hill-Wilson speak. He even said that some of the innovations that are taking place at the moment means that the contact center is actually becoming pretty cool again. So hopefully we should be able to see some results on the screen. And 56%, not yet. Nobody in the audience have got their own robot helpers currently assisting their contact center employees. Fantastic, because that's going to be useful, interesting as we go through this.
It's kind of lucky we've prepared what we're going to talk about, Ben, isn't it?
Very fortunate, Craig. So fantastic. Moving on to the topics that we are going to talk about. So firstly, what is robotic process automation? Cognizant there may be different levels of experience in the audience, so we'll just set the scene as to what RPA is. A quick history lesson, if you like, and how RPA has been used traditionally. Then we're going to talk about the new developments in automation. This is the really exciting stuff that means RPA is easy to adopt in the front office, what this looks like, and why we at IPI believe that now is the perfect time for contact centers to embrace these latest tools. We'll give some advice on how to get started based on our experience in the field and how sort of organizations best sort of plan that journey out. Then we're going to be talking about the importance of your agents within this journey, and despite what we see in the media, our employees are absolutely front and center for any contact center. And then we'll cover off some highlights, some things to consider, any gotchas to watch out for. And then lastly, we'll have a little look at building a business case, the benefits, and actual business reasons for agent-assisted automation, rather than just because we all like shiny new toys, right? So I'll hand over to Craig.
Okay, thanks, Ben. So based on the results of our poll earlier, it seems that quite a few people on the call haven't used RPA yet. That's not to say they don't know about it, but what we thought we'd do is just give a bit of context around what RPA is, first of all, set the scene. And we've got a couple of slides here to try and illustrate that concept. But the first and the most important point is that it is not a real robot in your contact center. So for those of you who are big fans of Futurama and was expecting killer robots, I'm going to have to dispel that myth straight away. Okay, but this is a more realistic picture of what we could imagine RPA as. So on the screen here, if you imagine these are all of our desktops or virtual machines where the digital workers operate. This is our digital workforce. So we've got 12 here, if I've done the maths correctly, and they're working 24/7, no breaks or holidays. They don't have a robot union yet. It depends on how the election goes tomorrow, I guess. They are software robots, digital agents that sit within an organization's infrastructure or in the cloud, out of sight, receiving work from things like web forms, emails, spreadsheets, and then interacting with business systems like your customer management or your billing platforms, websites, emails, in the same way as a live person would to carry out processes and get work done. And I literally mean they interact with the systems just like a real person. They can use logic and intelligence to determine actions, and they complete tasks that would take a human much longer to do. And generally those tasks are going to be very repetitive, high volume processes that are also quite boring for a human to do, and probably prone to a decent chunk of errors as well. And for me, actually, people always talk about the speed and the ability to redistribute their staff elsewhere, or not having to recruit so many new people, the kind of standard efficiency metrics, if you like. But for me, I find that the accuracy element alone can often save companies a lot of pain, cost and damage to the brand. And some examples of processes that are carried out by RPA in the back office, things like data entry, finance processes, reconciliations, resetting user passwords, onboarding new users or new customers, and general integrating between different systems. So if you've got systems that are difficult or expensive to integrate to get them to talk to by other means, we can use RPA almost as a digital glue, moving things across systems or putting it into multiple places. And sometimes that's more reliable and inexpensive than trying to upgrade all of your systems or develop new integrations as well. And we've seen the kind of fallout of some of those kind of big projects in the media over the last couple of years. So the digital workers are fast. They're much faster than a human processing something, but ultimately each one can still only complete a certain number of pieces of work a day because, like I said, they are physically carrying the work out on your systems. But as we've done now on this slide, and I'm not going to count these ones, there's too many for me, but if you need more capacity as your business grows or you want to add more processes from different areas, you just turn more on, and they'll immediately have access to all of your existing business processes that you've automated. So each individual digital worker would normally perform one task or process at a time, but they have the ability to perform an unlimited number of different processes. So they can switch from one to another whenever you want them to throughout the day or night, and you can schedule that in advance. And if you want them to cross-skill so that they can do different tasks, you just build what that looks like in your automation platform using a drag and drop interface, like a workflow. And then your digital workers will all know how to do that immediately. It's a very different idea of training compared to traditional training. You don't have to train up the digital workers individually. You don't have to book a training room months in advance, and then you don't lose a quarter of your digital workers after they've completed the training and got paid. So each digital worker doesn't have to be dedicated to one task or system. They can switch between different tasks. And some of our customers have particular seasonal demands for things like Black Friday and Christmas, just to be topical. And it's very difficult to staff to those kind of peaks with our traditional human workforce, getting them recruited and trained for such a short window. But it's much easier to increase your capacity with digital workers and then flex them across different tasks, maybe processing customer orders during the day and switching to more offline tasks overnight, like dispatching or stock updates and reconciliations. So hopefully for those that haven't used RPA before, that gives an idea of what it looks like. And I apologize if I've ruined anyone's dreams of having real life metal robots in the contact center, but it's more that the way they operate is very robotic, carrying out repetitive, boring tasks again and again at high volume without making errors.
So much like our poll earlier alluded to, traditionally, robotic process automation has mainly been a back office or an administrative function, where the digital workforce is kept separate to humans and their desktops. Now, even tools such as remote desktop automation, which is essentially a tool that sits on an agent's PC and copies and pastes or runs actions similar to a macro, these technologies generally haven't seen a huge adoption due to the difficulties associated with scaling them and security vulnerabilities as well. The fact that these desktop automation can only carry out one task at a time, generally in a sequence, and they have to take over an employee's entire desktop to do that, which can actually prevent employees carrying out other tasks really and doing other things. So the slide that we've got on screen now just demonstrates some of the key reasons why companies have enjoyed RPA in the back office and for admin functions, if you like. The stats come from Deloitte, research they carried out, and they actually predict further widespread adoption of RPA technology. But we're not going to talk about the back office today. We're here to talk about the fascinating developments with RPA and moving this capability to making it available for the front office as well for contact centers.
Thanks, Ben. So yeah, going back to our slide of where we had our digital workforce, what does RPA look like in the contact center? How does it differ from traditional RPA? Well, there was a key element missing from this slide earlier, and that's our agents. So we can see them now, and they're interacting with our digital workforce who are ready and waiting to assist our agents by gathering information and passing that back to agents, or carrying out background processes, or carrying out processes after the call for them. And we at IPI, we call that agent-assisted automation. So what we're going to do here is we're going to show an example of an agent-assisted automation platform. And this example is from a telecoms and media company. And the agent here is on a call with a customer, and they're using a single interface that's used to trigger robotic processes in the background. Okay, so what you've got at the top there is a bunch of tiles or processes that the employee has at their fingertips, and they can trigger that and get the digital workers to assist them in the background. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to carry out a customer search first of all, and we're putting the customer details in. And then if we can stop it here.
Oh, sorry, Gary, I'm a little bit too.
That's okay, that's perfect. What's actually happening in the background, I just wanted to pause it so that we could still see. At the bottom, we've got our 3 digital workers, and they are interacting with 3 of our legacy systems in the background. So something like a mainframe or traditional CRM type system. And one of them is getting contact history about the customer. One of them is getting details of the customer's products and services that they subscribe to. And then one of them's in a finance system getting billing information. And they're going to bring back that high level information into one consolidated view for our agent. Okay, there we go. So the agent's then got that. The agents then got that in one place at a high level, and they're able to drill down further if they need to, or to carry out the next bit of the call, the agent might want to click on one of the other tiles at the top, and that might be triggering off digital workers to interact with a completely different set of systems. So there might be 5, 10 or more systems that actually get used, but all the agent gets to see in the front end is this nice kind of simple interface, which is customizable and which is dynamic dependent on the path the agent takes. So then the agent can carry on with their call on the natural path of the call. We can leave that agent to it there.
If anybody had any doubts as to whether we were live or not, so moving on swiftly. So the clear message that we've had over the last year or so is that contact centers really want to start introducing automation to the front office. But why? Why do contact centers need this? Well, we all know so many businesses are under pressure to improve customer and employee experience whilst also cutting costs and improving the overall efficiencies. Some of the main challenges faced by contact centers are shown on the screen at the moment, and 54% of organisations say that they need new technology. They recognise that they have multiple clunky, unconnected systems that are not necessarily good for their agents or customer experience. But of this 54%, 76% of them cite a lack of budget as a reason for holding them back from doing any big capital IT refreshes. And we all know that generally companies have invested a lot of time and effort in their existing systems to ensure that they run reliably, even if it means that they are a bit complex to navigate perhaps, or they're a bit slow, a bit complicated, a bit hard to work around for, say, new starters, but they work. And organizations need a way to deliver a return on investment fast without necessarily ripping everything out and starting again and paying for big, expensive, complex IT systems. So 39% of organizations said that they had a lack of staff, and we're always trying to do more with less, right? So anything that can be automated or streamlined or anything that can help ease this burden can only be a good thing. But traditionally, the contact center industry has always suffered from notoriously high rates of employee churn, 30 to 45%. Recruiting new staff is expensive. It's a timely process. It can take a long time to get somebody up to full competency. And that is made especially worse if you have multiple complicated systems. It's just going to extend that training window even longer as well. So now we've got a bit of an idea as to what RPA is, and we've sort of set the scene a little bit. We're going to move on to how agent-assisted automation can work within the contact center, and some key considerations that any successful automation project will need to go through. And generally, the first question we get asked is, where do I start? Well, the first thing you want to be doing is thinking about the outcome that you're looking to achieve and what potential processes would be good for automation to help you achieve those outcomes. It might sound silly, but defining and considering your goal is absolutely crucial The goal needs to be clear and concise, and start trying to answer the questions: why do you want agent-assisted RPA? What specific pain points will RPA be able to fix? It is important to narrow those down and identifying those specific processes that will deliver the maximum impact to your employees, to your customers, and ultimately to your business. And here we want to be looking at things such as average handle times of a process, or maybe even just specific parts of a process. How much time customers have to wait whilst information is gathered, how much of a call is just wasted silent time, looking for inefficiencies in calls, but also within the systems that your agents are using. If we can start to identify that, we can start to scale it up, and by combining the sort of time with the number of calls that are affected, you'll start to get an idea of how much dead time there is. This is all time that is not adding any value to the business. So we've got this dead time, and that is our sort of target that we can start to try and start to claim back for the business and speed things up for your customers as well. You'll probably be quite surprised actually, because these numbers can get quite big quite quickly. But it's likely that we need to start considering subcomponents of a call as well, that an agent takes, and then break that into tasks that a digital worker can help with. And we will look at some examples of that in a moment. We are going to stick another poll up on the screen now. Ultimately, anything that we do in contact centres has to be of benefit to our customers. So that said, just time for a quick poll for the audience. What's the biggest frustration for your customers when they're on the phone to you currently? Hopefully you get to see that on screen. But is it that a call takes too long? Is it that customers are struggling to get their call resolved by the first person that they speak to? Is it perhaps a lack of insight of previous contact with your organisation? Is it that dreaded waiting on hold both before an interaction starts, or maybe even being passed between departments? And we'll just give that another couple of seconds. I think we've got some results, some responses coming in. We should be able to see some results on the screen in a second. So results here. So call taking too long. First contact resolution has come out on top, and a lack of insight yet previous contact. And generally, these are all reasons why we see our customers looking to deploy agent-assisted automation. Ultimately, if a customer has a problem and you can resolve it, if you can resolve it well, customers' loyalty towards your business will improve, even greater, in fact, than if a customer who's never had any problems or reason to contact you. So there's a good opportunity here. These interactions between our contact center agents and our customers create these experiences where loyalty can be driven up if handled well, or conversely driven down if handled poorly.
Okay, yeah, so what makes a good automated process then? So what you want to do is balance the strengths and weaknesses of your employees with those of your digital helpers. So you want to look for processes that lend themselves particularly well to automation. So in terms of those attributes, processes that match the criteria on the left are normally better for digital workers, but also worse for humans. So you want to look for processes that are high volume, low complexity. So if you only get one call about a particular task a day, and that's 10 minutes long maybe, that's probably not a good place to start. You want to look at calls that happen quite often, because you want to get the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to automating it. Digital workers perform best with structured data and clear decision logic, so they can take all manner of different branching paths, and they're really good at using logic in decisions and calculations. But there has to be a very defined outcome. We're not looking for any subjectivity there. So any kind of taking emotional factors into account, or if there's not a specific defined process map, then that's maybe not what we're looking for. Look for stuff that's mundane. Let's get rid of the boring stuff. No one wants to come into work and press the same 3 buttons 1,000 times a day. So let's get rid of the mundane stuff. And then in terms of where you're going to get a lot of benefit in terms of efficiency, if you've got multiple legacy systems, multiple legacy applications, maybe you don't have any existing integrations, or you've looked at developing or upgrading systems, but it's difficult or expensive or not possible, then we can layer on these digital workers to help just orchestrate all of that and put it together and then bring it back to our employees. But in terms of things that we want to avoid processes that don't happen a lot. Let's pick some fairly high frequency ones. Processes that have lots of weird and wonderful paths. Maybe there's one call type that has 100 different outcomes. That's maybe not a good one to start with. That's just going to really bog you down in kind of testing and delivering that. And then processes that require frequent back and forth with the customer. So ideally, we want to batch up some information, send it over to our digital workers, even if that's kind of 2-3 pieces of information. And then we want to spend time talking to the customer while the digital workers are doing stuff in the background. If all we're doing is pressing lots of buttons again, or sending stuff back and forth quite a lot, then we're not going to get the true value out of that. So in terms of some particular use cases, some of the areas where we've seen agents successfully being assisted, we're normally using digital workers to interface with the front end of systems, so that user interface, entering data, pressing buttons, copying and pasting data in and out. So we use them where other IT integrations either aren't possible or too complex or expensive. And we're trying to consolidate systems in one place for agents, taking them through a simplified, structured process, giving them a portal from which they can give data to a digital worker so that the digital worker can look something up or update something, or the agent can receive data from potentially multiple digital workers working in parallel in multiple places. So that avoids the agent having to navigate to one place after another, which really drags the call out. And so some of the examples of where customers are using this are, as soon as your customer identifies themselves in the IVR, their account number can be looked up by your digital workers, again, potentially in parallel if you want to gather multiple pieces of information. And then this can all be passed over and populated to the agent when the call comes through to them. So things like names, addresses, products and services, that can all be sent over to the agent. Providing information and pre-filling forms for the agent. So when an agent embarks on a certain call type or certain process, they'll be walked through the screens dynamically with those digital workers gathering the information in the background and then passing it back to the agent's desktop. So an example here might be, where is my order or delivery type questions, with the digital workers checking your company website or portal, checking maybe external logistics portals to try and track it down. And then they can even follow it up for you as well by sending automated messages to the relevant departments after the call. But yeah, the big wins are normally where you've got to look data up in multiple systems to get information. So maybe at the end of the call, your agent could trigger a process to be updated by the digital worker instead of the agent having to do it in after call work. Maybe if the agent's gathered information from the customer about a change of address or a meter reading, the process can be completed by the digital worker after the call. And they can also send out the updates like emails and confirmation around billing or scheduling any on-site visits. And the agent can just go straight back into the next call. New account setups or new user setups are another good one. If you need to enter a user or customer's details in a few different places to activate an account, or maybe a subscription plan or a SIM card, you can just capture that information once and pass those updates onto your digital workers to carry out. Another big area for us is the insurance industry. So, for instance, capturing a customer's details for a quotation and then getting your digital workers to compare that across multiple insurers, or getting them to re-enter the information after the quotation to put that customer on cover. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour in terms of some real life examples. And like Ben said earlier, you can always contact myself or Ben if you've got any other ideas or questions you want to explore further. Now, IPI, we're a company very invested in the contact centre industry. That's very much our heritage. And customer experience is at the top of our agenda. And we believe that agents are key to customer experience and should be a key consideration within your automation project as well. Yep, you heard me correctly. It may seem a bit strange to be doing a webinar about robotic process automation, and then for me to come out and tell you that your good old-fashioned flesh and blood human employees are one of the most important parts in the success of a deployment. It's certainly not what you hear in some parts of the media. It's normally all doom and gloom around how we'll all be bowing down to our new robotic overlords. But as we've seen for years now in contact centres, if your employee engagement is high, then you're going to be rewarded with a better customer experience, higher productivity, lower absence, and lower employee churn. So exceptional customer contact is our mantra at IPI, and that's why we wanted to focus heavily on empowering agents today. If you can free your employees up from tapping away across multiple screens, rekeying information, looking things up whilst the customer waits on the other end, all these kind of contact center tropes, then it allows your agents to build relationships with the customer instead and provide what the customer needs and concentrate on what humans are actually good at. In contact centers, we do suffer from high employee churn, high absence, and long training programs as well. So if we can reduce those by making our agents' lives easier and allowing them to focus on what they're good at, and reducing the time that it takes for them to become competent when starting their role, then we're also going to see massive reductions in costs anyway, and increases in revenue. Well, the way that agent-assisted automation improves things for your agents is primarily through simplification. So here we've got on screen an idea of what it looks like before agent-assisted automation. So perhaps this might seem familiar to some of you out there. Multiple systems to learn, multiple loggings, and then silence or the sound of a keyboard tapping whilst employees are juggling multiple systems instead of building those relationships with the customer. And we get stressed employees. Whereas with agent-assisted automation, you should be looking for a single user interface, clear, clean design, and a focus on your actual call flows, but customizable and dynamic when you need to make changes. So talking about applications and the applications our employees that are using in the contact center, we're going to run another poll now. And we're very interested to see how many different applications do your employees interact with to do their job in the contact center. So we've got 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 plus, and 10 plus. So we'll just leave that open a few seconds for people to respond to. I know I've certainly seen a few horror stories down the years in the contact centers I've been in.
Yeah, I've seen a few as well.
I probably worked on a high number of systems as well in a role within contact centers. There we go. Okay, so looks like 5 plus. So I mean, even 10 plus had 11%, and I was a bit worried we'd gone a bit too low with this, Ben, because I did see some research last month that showed the average number of applications that an agent uses to support customers on a weekly basis is 19. But I couldn't quite bring myself to put 15 plus or 20 plus in the poll, because I mean, for me, even 5+, just, it sounds like too much, doesn't it? It's not right, is it, to have to juggle that many systems?
I think what would be an interesting follow-up question is the case of how many applications do your new staff get access to from day one, and what that access to those systems as they sort of ramp up. But no, thank you everybody for submitting some responses. So moving on. So good automation platform should really be owned by the business. The business knows of the processes, knows of the interfaces of the systems that workers, whether that's human or digital, interact with, because essentially that's all a digital worker does. They interact with these systems just like their human counterpart, only much quicker. Generally, people who know the business best are people within the business. So a good platform that allows you that flexibility to build and configure as required is really quite important as well. You know which operational processes will deliver the most benefit to your customers and your staff. And even as we've been going through this presentation today, it's likely that some of you may have already started thinking about where automation could potentially assist in your front office or even your back office as well, because there was a high response for the first poll where it haven't rolled out RPA yet. So good automation platforms, generally low code so that businesses can pick it up quite quickly. You can build your own automations using an easy to use design functionality. And it means that you can apply your business rules to your digital workers and how you want them to adhere to those as well. Any automation project will need to be supported by your IT department. An IT department will be providing the input and advice on your infrastructure, where you house these digital workers, whether that's on premise or in the cloud. And more than likely, it's the IT department that will be providing access to your applications as well. So just like if you went out and hired a new group of staff, there would be some implications. So what applications, start thinking about digital workers' needs. What applications will the digital workers need to perform their roles? New staff, for example, do you allow them access to anything and everything? Or generally is there a ramp up period? And generally of successful automation projects, successful automation projects follow that same type of idea as well. Digital workers access applications in the same way as your agents do. Okay, so these digital workers physically launch and log into applications, so they will need their own user accounts. This is a bit of a good opportunity as well, where the business can have some fun with this. So you can come up with some inventive robot names. My favorite that I've ever heard working with a customer was Robo De Niro, but we also have another customer who calls theirs Fred. So you can have a bit of fun with this stage of the process as well. Digital workers, they need some desktops, they need some computing power, likely the case that these will live on virtualized desktops, but essentially they do need some compute to power them. But none of this really is too complicated. Pretty much everything you need will match what agents already use and access that you have already. And digital workers can only do the steps that you program into them. There isn't the same type of security risk with a digital worker as perhaps a newly joined human when they've just joined the company. There isn't that sort of risk that sort of firing from the hip. And these digital workers, as they stay within your organisation and they continue to evolve, they can reset their passwords when you need them to as well. So little things like that, you don't need to worry too much. But once we've covered these considerations, it's time to move on to what is really the most exciting phase of any project, and that is testing and launching. Great.
Thanks, Ben. So yeah, business end of the project, it's time to test it and it's time to launch it. So when you're putting together your automations, you will want to do lots of testing before you even pilot it with your agents. What digital workers are great at is following the steps you laid out for them, including kind of evasive action, what to do if something goes wrong or is unexpected. And you can make them really resilient to ensure that they keep the process alive as best as possible. But in those early days, what you'll normally find is an element of what you didn't expect in your understanding of the process. So it might be something like a screen that only appears with 5% of your customer types, and maybe all you need to do is press F12 and Z to get past it or something like that. Which is easy for a real person. But if you didn't come across that in your creation of the automation and your testing, then when the digital worker comes across it, it'll have to say, hey, I got this screen and I didn't know what to do with it, so I'm going to have to pass it back to you. So throughout your testing, you'll be looking for opportunities to refine like that. So you're going to want to rebuild that new outcome in there and then retest it and increase your success rates. So then when you do go live, it's best to pilot with a small group first, capture anything like that you hadn't anticipated in a controlled environment, make any changes, and then quickly redeploy and look for further opportunities to improve it. And then you can start giving the wider agent population the chance to see your new interface and give it a try in a kind of Pepsi challenge kind of way. And that way they can see for themselves how helpful the new approach is to them compared to the mixture of the old systems.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. So it's at this stage we can start to look at demonstrating the value of the project, and ultimately any project, for it to be deemed truly successful, has to demonstrate a value back to the business, right? So as we've already alluded to, there's lots of buzzwords in the industry and lots of potentially shiny new tools available for organisations with unlimited budgets, but we know that's not always the case. It can be a bit daunting to get a bit carried away, but if you've embarked on an automation journey for the right reasons, then you're trying to deliver a specific business outcome. So it's important that we track the success and ensure that you are achieving a return on your investment. So thinking about the metrics that we mentioned earlier, are you able to track them well? Are you able to track them well currently? Are you able to keep a track of those as the project progresses and therefore track the impact of the project? And think about what time frame you'll be using to do so as well. As we mentioned earlier, these are some of the reasons for automating tasks, and they're all areas where automation can deliver a win for businesses, and they definitely play to the strengths of digital workers. If you are considering exploring an automation project, especially agent-assisted automation, then you probably have in your mind an area linked to one of these things which could be improved or perhaps made more efficient. So if we can track an as-is measurement of the issues, we can utilise these in a business case and track the improvement over time once the project is up and running. And there may be some tweaks that we need to make to a process just to enhance it and polish it a little bit further. But this is, yeah, if we can track that, it makes things a lot easier to measure the impact of it. Each of these areas are good places to look at when measuring performance and areas to improve. The top three, I'd say, tend to be the big quantifiable ones in terms of immediate monetary value, but then sort of 0.4 and 5 tend to have a huge knock-on potential over a greater period of time. Once we're happy with the processes in the first area, then we can start considering what other areas the technology could potentially be rolled out to. It's much easier to start small and expand a project. But as you do so, you'll be able to do so with the ability to incorporate your learnings and your experiences that you've gleaned from the first initial processes, which will only make it quicker and easier to go live at each stage of a project expansion. So pretty key to sort of mention that as well.
So yeah, why agent assisted automation? What the benefits are? So you said some of the big ones there, Ben. But what I've tried to do here is just do a recap of some of the ones we've mentioned, but also talk through some that we haven't come across yet. So one desktop interface for employees. So we talked about simplifying things and putting it all in one place for them, because what that's going to do is it's going to reduce their training and it's going to increase the speed at which they become competent. And if we can reduce stress for our employees and make their lives better whilst they're in work, then we can see a knock-on effect on churn. So because multiple processes can be worked in parallel with our digital workers, that's going to give us that cool time saving, a lower AHT, rather than an agent having to do things sequentially one after the other. We've got an increased opportunity for meaningful conversations. So our employee is able to build that relationship with the customer and concentrate on them rather than worrying about minimizing system 1 and expanding system 2 and bringing system 3 to the front and making sure they write notes down in Notepad all at the same time. Which also means if we simplify it, there's going to be a reduced error rate and also less chance of them deviating from the desired process, because all we've done is just put a dynamic web page up for them to help them follow through that happy path, that best practice process. Customer experience, so first call resolution. When I call a contact center, I want that first person to have the tools they need to help me rather than put me on hold whilst they transfer me for 10 minutes. And I've had a lot of bad experiences recently with calls like that. If those digital workers can be that second or third or fourth person, but at the same time, all at once, then that agent becomes kind of the orchestrator of that customer experience. And it also means that by speeding it up, we're reducing the silent time or the tappy time or the on hold time. And then we've got these digital workers, but I already said they don't need breaks or holiday. They also don't need working time directive minimum rest periods between their shifts. So and that there speaks an ex workforce planner. I've certainly changed my tune in the last few years, but these digital workers, we can have them turned on 24/7, but your contact center might only be open 8 till 8, say. So what are they going to do overnight? They're not having a secret robot party. What we can get them doing is actually working on your admin, working on your backlogs, working on your back office type stuff. So you can dual purpose them. Even if your contact center isn't a 24/7 contact center, you have essentially 3 shifts of 8 hours of hyper productive employees, and each one costs less than a human employee. So that's really how you want to maximize and sweat them out to get the most out of them.
I think that's a key thing that's often potentially overlooked, is that people see digital workers just for the daytime, but actually when you turn the lights out on the way out, these guys to humanize them, but these digital workers can then pick up those back office functions and they'll have that ready for you when you come back in to turn the lights on in the morning. So that's a really key part, and yeah, I always enjoy talking about that one with our customers. So sorry, Craig, on to the summary. Over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, so just summarizing then, the main steps that we went through around delivering that successful automation project. So pick the right process. So ones that will help agents deliver a big positive impact in terms of efficiency and customer experience. Start simple, run before walking. And if you start with your simpler processes to allow you as owners and your employees the chance to get to know the technology, and then roll out one area first, generate that excitement by demonstrating it and allowing employees from other areas to see the benefit that it can give, and they'll soon want to start giving you their own processes to start putting into the mix. So involve employees, consider your employees, and that goes both ways. So get their input on what currently works or doesn't work well for them. They'll certainly know and tell you what they don't like about the systems they use or what takes a long time. But also make sure to communicate regularly with them about what's happening, so that you don't give them the wrong impression. And this kind of harks back to what we said around the scaremongering that you see in the media. We don't want them to get the wrong impression with that kind of thing. Involve IT, consider IT requirements. So whilst most good automation platforms will be no code, you won't need to have any programming skills. It'll be owned by the operational side of the business, but you need to consider things like security and scalability. So make sure you involve IT early, and then they can arrange access for your applications or any hardware or virtual environments, and also help with testing and things like that as well. Which brings me on to test and rollout. So test, and test again. Make sure that your processes do exactly what they're supposed to do. But consider what happens if things don't follow the happy path. Like I said, robots are excellent at doing exactly what you tell them, but if something unexpected happens, you need to ensure that they can elegantly retry or pass back control to an employee. Demonstrate value, measure success and celebrate it. So by demonstrating the success of early processes, you will generate that excitement and that buzz and that buy-in from across the business, and that'll allow you to deploy more automations and faster. This will ensure you get even more benefit return from your investment, your initial investment in that automation platform. It is going to be a platform that you will keep going and add to. It's not something where you think, actually, we do a small piece of work at the start, turn it on, and then that's it forever. You want to keep the ball rolling. You want to keep adding to it and improving and extending its reach to squeeze every last drop out of it that you can. And I think that brings us to our Q&A. So, do we have any questions there, Ben?
Yes, the first one we've got it. Will the slides be shared afterwards? That's from Jason. Jason's my new favourite person. Yes, absolutely. We can get a copy of those over to you. And we've got the recordings as well. Jason, if you're still on, we should have your contact details from when you registered. So let's pick that up.
I'm normally that person that asks if the slides are available. So that's good.
Next question, can you use this in the cloud?
Yeah, so you can deploy on-prem or in the cloud. It's up to your kind of IT business strategy.
What type of business or industries does this tend to work well with? From Hannah.
Okay, so well, a contact center industry, I guess, if we use that as a kind of catch-all term. But I think just by going from some of our poll results today, and anyone who spent a lot of time in contact centers will know and have seen some of the kind of things that we're talking about today, where if you've got a lot of systems, a lot of back and forth, looking things up, or back and forth between systems, or you want to make your lives simpler for agents, then that's what we're really looking at here. It's kind of outsourcing without it leaving your business, all of the mundane and repetitive bits. But if I were to be pushed to answer the question, probably as the person intended, some of the good areas we see are things like insurance companies, travel and telecoms and media type companies. These tend to be areas that use multiple systems to deliver their jobs, and quite often they'll be fairly old style applications, so maybe you call it legacy type applications, mainframes, or maybe it involves looking up things in multiple websites. So they're just a few of the kind of industries off the top of my head that tend to work well with this kind of automation.
Yeah, I think RPA as a whole is pretty universal. It can have applications universally, but for this, yeah, I think Craig's right. It's that insurance and travel, reducing errors. So next one, here we go. Oh, sorry, I've just.
We haven't yet automated the ability for us to carry out webinars and process questions.
Yeah, this is really taxing me. This is,
That's okay, Ben. We can.
Can robots complete after call work? From Richard.
Yes. So now, when I've worked in contact centres, there was always a drive to reduce after call work, or particularly the percentage of after call work that was done as part of the overall call. So it would always be around talking more and getting more stuff done with the customer, so you ensure that you get all of that information from the customer to update their account or whatever it was that they were asking for. But definitely this is a great way of reducing that after call work, because the interface that you saw earlier, you make sure that all the right information is captured in there, and then you just pass that off to the digital worker to carry out after the call. And then the agent doesn't even need to go into after call work or wrap, depending on what you call it. They can be ready for that next call. And the digital worker, as well as carrying out the update, that might be a moving address, or there might be kind of multiple steps in a process. So sometimes we see not only does the employee have to do work in wrap up, but they then have to diarise stuff for themselves to come back the next day and maybe check that an update's been done, or check or contact the customer back, or contact another department. You can then actually pass all of that off to digital workers, and they can put it in their own kind of deferred queue to diarise stuff for themselves to come back with. So it just takes that whole stress and anxiety away, but also it means that if that agent isn't in 5 days' time, then we don't need to worry, because we don't need to try and find a way of hacking into their PC to get their spreadsheet of diarised items that they need to work on that day, because it's all automated and it's all going to get taken care of. So yeah, good question. That's definitely a good way to use it.
We seem to have had a few pop-ins since the Q&A slide's gone up. So another one here from Nick Craig. What is the pricing model for RPA with the concept of nighttime usage? This suggests that there is a cost per digital agent rather than a time-based or process-based charge.
Yes, so it's a cost per digital agent. How many you need is going to depend on how many pieces of work need to be done, really. So for any of you WFM people who are close to my heart out there, if you imagine you're planning for your contact center, you're looking at things like Erlang or however you would schedule your work coming in. In the same way, you're going to have digital workers who can do pieces of work, but their AHT is going to be a lot faster. The amount of time it takes them to process each piece of work is going to be a lot faster, and they can do those pieces of work 24/7. So typically you'll be looking at for buckets of work to get them to tackle. That'll be the stuff that gets done overnight. And you'd normally need to kind of size up how many pieces of work there are versus how many digital workers you'd need.
There is a tool we can use to do that as well, as we're mentioning. So we've got literally 2 minutes left. I don't know if we're going to get through all of these. Jason's back. Hi, Jason. Who is typically your champion for the project? Presumably it's business-led rather than IT. How high in the organisation do you need to be?
Yeah, so sorry, but I'm answering all of them because
That's okay. I'm just reading.
Yeah, so people who are the kind of process owners are normally great people to have involved. So people in continuous improvement, business analysts, or customer experience, heads of customer experience, head of contact center, the ones that kind of see the bigger picture in terms of the efficiencies that you're going to get from it, but also you're going to need to involve your subject matter experts, your SMEs, those process owners, because they're going to be the ones that will save you a lot of time, because they're going to know step by step what the process should be and how that should be replicated for your digital workers.
Right, last one. I think we've got 1 minute or maybe even less than from Carl.
Lightning round.
This is the lightning round, yeah. Stop talking, Craig. Can I automate the process of creating and storing credentials securely in multiple applications, servers and systems?
Yeah, good question. Security very high up on the agenda. So everything is encrypted for the digital workers, and the passwords and credentials are all stored centrally encrypted, and even the human admins of the digital workers cannot see what those passwords are. So if you, for instance, created an initial password, it would then be encrypted. And if you then get your digital workers to update their passwords when the time period comes, they can update that back in the encryption store, and then no one humanly will ever know what that password is or has ever been. So yeah, fully secure encryption kind of locker or storage there.
We've just ticked over to a minute past 11, so that does draw our session to an end. But thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you for all the great questions and the participations. Sorry if we didn't get around to answering your questions at the end. Contact details are up on the screen for both myself and Craig. The recording of this is going to be available on the IPI website as well. I believe there's a couple of things for the slides. We can get copies of these sent out as well, PDF, as long as we've got your details, which we should have when you registered for the session today. We can get those sent out to you. But Craig, unless there's anything else, I think that's time just to thank everybody. And
yeah, just thanks everyone for the questions. Thanks for taking the time to participate and join us for the webinar.
Thanks very much.
Bye.